Hello, and welcome to another segment of Divine Femininity United. I am your girl, Dr. Bianca, Miss B. Lee, and we are here for our Sunday segment of our collective reading of the amazing, transformative, groundbreaking, expanding, evolving book, Power versus Force: The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior, written by the great Dr. David R. Hawkins. He speaks in detail, in detail about the levels of consciousness and how we can scale ourselves to a higher pinpoint, and how we can utilize our bodies and the brilliant way that our bodies are systemed and programmed, and how they were built, the brilliant way that they were built, and how our nervous system, our sensory systems are able to tell us, truth, authenticity. They're able to show us, they're able to protect us, and the higher we evolve in our consciousness, the more aware we become, the more aligned we become, the better we can, be guided by these things that are purposed and were crafted and created for us to help guide us, to aid us in this journey we call life. It's beautiful. It's absolutely amazing, man. This book is absolutely groundbreaking. And I've gotten so much from it. I hope you have, and I hope you are, as we're going along in this journey together. That's why we go along in this journey together, you all, because listen, we're holding each other's hand, walking each other back home, okay? Welcome, everyone who is viewing. Hello, my beautiful sister. Hello. All is well. I hope all is well with you all. We are airing live on multiple platforms, on Clubhouse, on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, simultaneously. So wherever you are viewing from, we want to thank you for your presence, for being here. We want to thank you for your energy, for even giving yourself permission to learn these things as we're learning them together. You know what I mean? I thank you. I thank you, whether you're listening in real time or whether you're listening on the replay. I thank you for listening in and supporting and growing as we grow together. Okay. Alrighty, as you all know, I don't like to waste time. I like to jump right on in it so that I can release you back to your day. We are reading chapter number 23. Chapter number 23, and it is entitled The Search for Truth. The Search for Truth, okay? At any point you hear something that resonates with you, please utilize the comment section, utilize the chat, wherever you're viewing from, and share your thoughts, okay? Share your thoughts so that we can all gain revelation and insight from your view and things like that, okay? Otherwise, we're only left with our own, all right? Share and share alike. We thank you in advance for your views, for your contribution, okay? Here we go. Chapter 23, The Search for Truth. Although it may sound cynical at first, we must admit that for everyday operational purposes, truth is whatever is subjectively convincing at one's current level of perception. At the lower levels of consciousness, propositions are accepted as true, even when they're illogical, unfounded, and express tenets neither intellectually provable nor practically demonstrable. This isn't a phenomenon restricted to the lunatic fringe. Locally, far more often than we'd like to admit, innocent people are convicted and jailed on the testimony of clearly irrational and biased witnesses. And globally, the basis for perennial wars, such as those in Slavic Europe or the Middle East, is an insane belief in the justice of revenge, which virtually guarantees endless conflict. With few exceptions, even religions that ostensibly represent the teachings of Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, have never forbidden war or the killing of other human beings under justifiable circumstances. Justifiable, of course, to those doing the killing. Their victims probably wouldn't appreciate the justification. Such self-contradictory behavior, which is diametrically opposed to the underlying principles of a faith, will appear less surprising if we apply critical factor analysis to calibrate the evolution or devolution of spiritual teachings over time. My goodness. Let's take a look at the world's foremost religious teachings in this new light. Let's do it. First is Christianity. The level of truth originally expounded by Jesus Christ calibrates at 1,000, the highest level attainable on this plane. By the 2nd century, the level of truth of the practice of his teachings had dropped to 930, and by the 6th century to 540. By the time of the Crusades, at the beginning of the 11th century, it had fallen to its current 498. I just want to kind of sit there. We're talking about Christianity here, and how when Christ taught, his teachings calibrated at the highest level attainable on this plane, the highest level of consciousness attainable in this 3D realm, in this human life, which is 1,000. And by the 2nd century, the level of truth of the practice of his teaching had dropped to 930, still in the realm of enlightenment. It just dropped 70 points. And by the 6th century, it dropped from the 2nd to the 6th, you all. From the 2nd century to the 6th century, it dropped from 930 to 540. That's just above love. That's so far away from enlightenment. Just above love, barely. Okay, because love calibrates at 500. By the time of the Crusades, at the beginning of the 11th century, it had fallen to its current, which is 498. So we're just right now, it's under the level of love. We're talking about Christianity here. A major decline in the year AD 325 was apparently due to the spread of misinterpretations of the teachings, originating from the Council of Nicaea. Students of religious history will find it interesting to calibrate Christianity's level of truth before and after Paul, Constantine, Augustine, and so on. It should be noted that the Lamsa translation from the Aramaic of the New Testament calibrates at 750, and the King James Version, which is translated from the Greek, calibrates at 640. I'm going to say that again. The Lamsa translation from the Aramaic of the New Testament calibrates at 750, still in the calibration of enlightenment. And the King James Version, which is widespread taught, especially in Western teachings, which is translated from the Greek at 640. Just as there is a wide range in the level of truth in various translations, so there is a wide variation between different Christian practices. Most major persuasions, Roman Catholicism, Anglicanism, I never heard of that. It's Anglicanism, Anglicanism, okay? Christian Science and many small denominations, such as the Quakers, calibrate in the high 500s. So that's just above love. Specialized interpretations, such as that of the contemporary Course in Miracles on the 14th century mysticism of Meister Eckhart, calibrated at 600. As in the case of Islam, however, extreme fundamentalist group that explicit reactionary political agendas can calibrate as low as 125. My goodness, that's Christianity, you all. And as it pertains to the levels of consciousness, whew, my goodness, I feel the heaviness of that because, because the mistranslations, the misteachings are being so taught and widespread taught. I mean, to the point where it is being taught and being sold as the way. And if you don't follow this, then, and that's likely why it's calibrating lower than what it was when Christ was actually teaching it. That's likely why, because they took his teachings and filtered it through their ego, their man-made ego. And then their man-made ego then wrote it down from their own perspective and then made it a law, a rule to follow that somehow we all, wow. Now, next faith, next religion, Buddhism. Buddhism. The level of truth of the teaching of Buddha was also originally at 1,000. By the 6th century AD, the level of truth and practice had dropped to an average of 900, still at enlightenment. These teachings have deteriorated less than any other religion. Hinayana Buddhism, the lesser vehicle, still calibrates at 890, still enlightenment. The Mahayana Buddhism, the greater vehicle, calibrates at 960. Zen Buddhism is at 890. So Buddhism, although it dropped from the original 1,000 that Buddha had taught from, the level of enlightenment, it's still, the teachings as of current are still enlightening. I believe that because a lot of Buddhist teachings are heart-centered, full of wisdom. Oh my goodness, for sure. And they are completely detached from the material world, for sure. Hinduism, that's next. The teachings of Lord Krishna calibrated at 1,000 and have weakened over time, but the truth of the current practice still calibrates at 850, still in the realm of enlightenment. Enlightenment is from 700 to 1,000. 700 to 1,000, okay? Judaism. The teachings of Abraham calibrated at 985. The practice that was current at the time of Moses calibrated at 770. The level of truth of the Torah, modern Judaism, calibrates at 499. The Kabbalah is 720. The Zohar is 730. Wow. Modern Judaism calibrates at 499. Under love, just under love. Islam. The level of consciousness of Muhammad was 740. And the Quran calibrates at 720. The kernel of Islamic faith is an expression of loving acceptance and inner peace. But the evolution of practical dogma was intertwined from the start with the politics of territorial expansion in the form of jihad or religious warfare. The truth of Islamic teachings had dropped severely by the end of the Crusades. In modern times, the ascendance of the fanatic nationalistic religious movements characterized by paranoia and xenophobia has rapidly eroded the spiritual essence of this faith. At the present time, okay, remember it started off with the consciousness of Muhammad. It started off at 740, which was just inside of the level of enlightenment, 700. At the present moment, the level of truth of the teachings of the militant Islamic fundamentalism is 130. My goodness. Whew, that is a drop. When we look at the decline of the level of truth of the world's great religions, we notice that those that are the most yin have remained relatively pure throughout the ages, whereas those that are more yang, involved in worldly affairs, have degraded markedly until the militant extremist faction of the most aggressive religion has actually sunk below the critical level of the integrity at 200. What we just read is that Islam is calibrating at 120, which is under the level of integrity, which is at 200. My goodness, current day. The more dualistic the creed, the greater its vulnerability to misinterpretation seems to be. Dualism promotes a split between belief and action and the discernment of levels of truth. When this occurs, the spiritual essence can be confused in translation into physical expression. Thus, the conceptual Christian soldier of the spirit becomes, through a distorted literal translation, a self-justified battlefield killer. The Hindus did not fall into the era of confusion levels of interpretation. The battle described in the opening of the Bhagavad Gita was never misinterpreted to suggest that Lord Krishna taught that believers are to engage in actual warfare. The Buddha's view that the cause of all pain and suffering is ignorance, which is the only sin, quote unquote, possible, and that one's duty is to be compassionate towards others and pray for them, is also hardly susceptible to such distortions. It's true. The downfall of lofty spiritual teachings has been their misinterpretation by the less enlightened. Hello, somebody. I'm going to say that one more time. The downfall of all lofty spiritual teachings have been their misinterpretation by the less enlightened. So the ones that are teaching haven't even done the work to increase and elevate their consciousness, right? They're teaching from where they are, not from where the teachings are. Each level of consciousness predefines its own limited capacity for perception and comprehension. Until one has become enlightened oneself, or at least experienced the higher states of consciousness, all spiritual teachings remain hearsay and are thus prone to distortion and misunderstanding. Scripture can be quoted to justify any position. Hello? Because we hear it all the time. Scripture being used to justify someone's biased point of view. Okay? The righteous, quote unquote, are always dangerous because of their imbalanced perception and their consequent indifference to moral violence. Moral violence, judgment, damning people to hell, isolating, kicking people out. Okay? Within any religion, fundamentalist sects always calibrate lowest, often operating at the same level of consciousness as criminality. Wow. Their hallmark is egocentric extremism and irrationality. But with 85% of the human population calibrating below the critical level of 200, error is easily disseminated and readily accepted around the world. It's so true. It's so true. Cults proliferate because the general public has no objective criterion within which to distinguish truth from falsehood. Using the tools of this study, we may identify any purportedly spiritual movement that calibrates below the level of 200, a quote unquote cult. As we've seen above, cults aren't just isolated renegade phenomena. They also thrive as tolerated subgroups within the world's great religions, distorting teachings and subverting their intent. Cults needn't be formally religious at all. The ultimate cult, of course, is the anti-religion, based on anti-divinity, known as Satanism. It has no explicit religious agenda of its own, as it defines itself through the antithesis of reversal of benign principles. And in one form or another, it's always been with us. As up implies down and light darkness, man's socially organized search for truth and his commitment to attaining higher spiritual levels has always implied the socially organized spread of falsehood and submission to the lowest energy fields. Examination of the nature of anti-religion demonstrates, in fact, the enormously destructive power of negative energy fields. Examples are unfortunately ready at hand. It's so true. The trappings of Satanism grew as fashions of a popular youth subculture, its primary vehicle being an overt musical genre. But principles are implicit in trappings, and principles generate attractor fields. The effects are all too familiar to any clinical psychiatrist who practices near an urban area. It's true. The destruction of energy fields spreads like disease. Victims become desensitized in distinctions between good and evil, a value inversion that can be clinically examined. Habituals are found to directly display blown out acupuncture systems and desynchronization of the cerebral hemispheres in response to repetitive negative patterns of the associated music. The net result is, in effect, a hypnotic trance during which the listener is highly susceptible to the violent and profane suggestions of the lyrics. And I know here, and he's probably referring to like rock and hard rock and heavy metal and things like that, but that can actually be translated over to other genres as well, because there are some rap right now, there are some R&B right now that is very, 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 very reckless and dangerous to the listener, to their mental state, to their emotional state, to their spiritual state, to their balance of all, the oneness, alignment of all. It is, yeah, absolutely. Even TV shows, just anything that we take into our gates, ear gates, eye gates. Yeah. In this sense, these children become literally enslaved and prone to later bouts of irrational destruction where they truthfully don't know why they act out these post-hypnotic suggestions, and the influence persists. They don't know why. There's something about, what it is the more you listen, the more you listen to the things or watch these things that are not good for you, is sowing seeds in you. It's dropping the seed. The first time you listen to it, it's dropping the seed in you. The more you listen to it, it's watering the seed. And just like any plant, the more you water, the more you nurture, the more it produces fruit and harvest. So your harvest in this instance is a life of destruction and not knowing why. Not knowing why, because I was just listening to, and it's just a harmless TV show, or it's just a song. Okay, it's not just anything when our receptors are constantly on and receiving. Our transmitters are always picking up signals, picking up frequencies, picking up. We have to be very deliberate and very intentional with what we allow in our systems, because it is planting a seed, and you can produce out of that seed and don't even know where this came from, how this came. That goes for connecting with certain people, being in certain places, and doing certain things as well. Okay. Continued weakening of the body and its immune system long after the music stops is accompanied by an inversion of kinesiological response. Negative stimuli that would make a normal person go weak cause a strong response, while those that would make a normal person strong now produce a weak one. Unaware that they're the victims of a potent negative energy field, the members of this culture sink into sometimes inescapable subservience to forces beyond their comprehension. Listen. Oh my goodness. Members of this culture sink into sometimes inescapable subservience to forces beyond their comprehension. So you will become enslaved pretty much, mentally, emotionally, spiritually entrapped in this behavior, in this mindset, in this programming, and inescapable at times. Wow. Youth subjected to such physical, emotional, and sexual abuse can suffer permanent damage to the brain's neurotransmitter balance, becoming adult depressives who habitually seek out abusive partners and must endlessly struggle against an inclination to suicide that is, in fact, a lingering form of post hypnotic suggestion. Wow. We may wish to deny that such a spiritual plague, reminiscent of the Dark Ages, could remain so injurious in our enlightened society. But such perverse influencers and influences don't operate in a moral vacuum or arise from a social matrix that doesn't already incorporate preconditions for their growth. The paradox of our puritanical, forgive me, society is that it encourages constant seduction that denies satisfaction. Never satisfied. Gotta always go for more. So a perpetual frustration of normal outlets eventually finds release in perverse ones. If we look more closely, we may find that other elements of what we call civilization, in fact, foster the persistence of such perversions. It's true. It is so true. In everything, drugs are glorified, abuse is glorified, violence is glorified, sexual perversion is glorified. It's glorified. Undervaluing one another, glorified. Harming self, undervaluing self, glorified. Selling ourselves for money or for fame or doing each other in, throwing each other under the bus for money, fame, popularity, to get a one-up. That's, my goodness. While the young are being programmed by specialized TV and computer games that glorify violence, their parents are being brainwashed by adult media. Kinesiological testing showed that a fairly typical TV show caused test subjects to go weak 113 times during a single episode. Oh my God, you all. It's for this reason alone. I have not had a TV in my home in over 7 years. Not a single one. Not a single one. Television. They are giving you what to visualize. They're telling you, programming you. It's literally called TV programs. No, when I got revelation of that, I'm intentional about what I watch, what I connect to. All of the stuff about I don't even want to go into it about what took place yesterday. I'm not even giving energy to that, okay? Each of these weakening events suppressed the observer's immune system and reflected an insult to the viewer's central as well as autonomic nervous system. Invariably accompanying each of these 113 disruptions of the acupuncture system were suppressions of the thymus gland. Each insult also resulted in damage to the damage to the brain's delicate neurohormonal and neurotransmitter systems. Each negative input brought the watcher closer to eventual sickness and to imminent depression, which is now the world's most prevalent illness. My word. Ooh. I'm taking this in slowly because it needs to be received. Like it really, really does. It needs to be received. I was talking to one of my clients this morning because he's doing psychedelic therapy. He's undergoing psychedelic therapy. And which is another thing that I offer. I do. But in his journey, he was explaining to me how he's feeling and the jovial nowness that he's in right now. He's very present. And I love that he stated, I don't have any worries, and I'm not there's no concern in me. He said, I feel here, I feel now, I feel present, I feel free, I feel weightless, and those are the things that we're supposed to feel on a regular basis. But what happens is we are so glued to social media. We're glued to the TV programs. But let's I gave an example today. Let's just, for example, let's talk about scrolling down your news feed on any timeline, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you're scrolling, TikTok, it doesn't matter. And we're looking at videos or captions or, whatever the case, images. And we'll see one video that someone posts and it's something that makes us crack up laughing. And then we go to the next video and immediately we go from laughing to now angry. And then we keep scrolling and we immediately go from anger to sadness. And then we immediately go to the next video. We immediately go from sadness to, oh, love. That was so sweet. And then from, oh, so sweet to the next video. Now we're back angry again. Do you know that that is violence towards your own nervous system? That is violence towards your own sensories, your own neurotransmitter system. That is violence towards your own internal systems. It's violence. It's damage, like he just stated. It is damage to the brain's delicate neurohormonal and neurotransmitter systems. It's damage. Oh my goodness. And we do this every day. I know some of us, and I had to get on myself too. Some of us, when we wake up in the morning, the first thing we do is grab these phones. Exactly what do you think you missed in the matter of a couple of hours? You know what I'm saying? Some of us are stuck to it, to where we're not even embodying our own now moment, because we're too busy looking at other people's moments, or we're too busy telling everybody else or showing everybody else our moments instead of actually living them and being in them. We're so in need of validation and we want someone to tell us how great we look, or how great we sound, or how good our car is, and how wonderfully dressed we are, and how my goodness, you all. I'm going to keep reading. Subtle grades of depression kill more people than all of the other diseases of mankind combined. Listen, I'm going to say this again, because some of this stuff that we're exposing ourselves to is causing imminent depression. Subtle grades of depression kill more people. Subtle grades of depression kill more people than all the other diseases of mankind combined. There is no antidepressant that will cure a depression that's spiritually based. For the melee doesn't originate from the brain dysfunction, but from an accurate response to the desecration of life. The body is the reflection of the spirit in its physical expression, and its problems are the dramatizations of the struggles of the spirit that gives it life. A belief that we ascribe to out there has its effect in here, in us. Whereas everyone dies by his own hand. That's a hard clinical fact, not a moral view. Everyone dies by his own hand. What are you doing to you that's killing you? What are you exposing yourself to that's killing you? Softly, slowly, and you're not aware of. Even in the Bible, it says the people perish for the lack of knowledge. They died because they lacked awareness. They died because they lacked knowing. Come on now. They lacked consciousness. I need y'all to be with me here, okay? Be with me here. This is good. The attempt to impose standards of would-be absolute good and evil is, in fact, one of the greatest moral pitfalls. But without moralizing, we can plainly state that whatever calibrates above 200 supports life and may therefore be functionally defined as good, quote unquote. Whereas whatever calibrates below 200 is destructive, non-supportive of life, and can thus be declared functionally evil, quote unquote. Through testing, we can prove that a false premise, such as the end justifies the means, is operationally evil. Yet, this is a routinely accepted justification for much of human behavior, from the peccadillos of commerce to the enormities of war. Such spiritual ambiguity, leading ultimately to irretrievable confusion between functional good and evil, has always been the Achilles heel of human society. The confusion between good and evil. My goodness, because the lines are blurred here, people. Just look at today's society. What is deemed as good? Look at the justice system. What is supposed to be deemed as good? My goodness, man. The process of perverting truth through a failure of discernment is responsible for providing the vehicle for the decline in the world's great religions, noted previously in this chapter. Religions that fall below the level of 500 may preach love. Listen, religions that fall below the level of 500 may preach love, but they won't be able to practice it. And no religious system that encourages war can claim spiritual authority without the blatant hypocrisy that's made atheists of many honest men. Listen, listen, okay. Society is collectively most vulnerable when the capacity to distinguish between attractors and imitators, or to perceive nuances of differing levels of consciousness, is dulled. This is how civil abuses become law. Listen, y'all. This is how civil abuses become law, and political extremists persuade with religious slogans. The children of violence become its perpetrators because a confused society that's lost the capacity for discernment necessary to protect its own consciousness can hardly hope to protect its young. An individual's level of consciousness is determined by the principles to which one is committed. To maintain progress in consciousness, there can be no wavering from principle, or the individual will fall back to a lower level. Expediency is never an adequate justification. If it's wrong to kill another human being, that principle can allow no exceptions. Regardless of how emotionally appealing a construct may be used to justify the exception. Thus, a society that condones capital punishment will always have a problem with murder. Both are products of the same level of perception. After all, to the murderer, the killing of the victim is a justifiable exception. Once a principle is breached, its mutated form propagates like cancer. A society that supports killing, whether in war, by the police, or by the penal system, can't at the same time effectively stop criminal killing. To kill is to kill is to kill. There's no accepting the fact. The decision to kill or not is a basic issue on the path to reveal power. But this rudimentary step hasn't even been addressed by 85% of the world's population or by virtually any of its governments. Coco, the famous Samian resident of the Primate Research Institute, who has worked for some years with a psychologist and developed a sophisticated sign language vocabulary, is truthful, affectionate, intelligent, and trustworthy. Her integrity calibrates at 250. Thus, one is safer with Coco, a gorilla, than with 85% of the humans on the planet. Come on. And I will say this, the animals, nature is definitely more safer. It's a safer, better environment, better company, more loving than being around some humans. That's real. Okay. Injury to man's spiritual eye has resulted in dimness of moral vision and blindness to truth, which afflict 85% of the Earth's population who linger below the level of integrity. The great issue that confronts mankind as a whole is the healing of his spiritual blindness. The more immediate problem of right and wrong that always diverts our societal focus only exists as a function of perception based on the lower levels of consciousness. Little children must be taught that dangerous behaviors are wrong. But as they grow older, discernment should replace moralism. Whether or not it's wrong to kill other human beings may be a moral dilemma at lower levels of consciousness. At higher levels, the very question is ridiculous. Right. The very question, whether is it wrong to kill another human being? Why even ask that? When you have a higher level of consciousness, of course it's wrong. Are you kidding me? Conventional morality is therefore only a provisional substitute for a faculty of higher consciousness. Moralism, a byproduct of duality, becomes insignificant as the consciousness level rises through the 500s and is irrelevant at the level of 600. That's true. Moralism, a byproduct of duality. The higher you raise yourself up on the scales of consciousness, the levels of consciousness, we don't have to determine what's moral and what's not anymore, because we are light. We are love. The higher we go, we are peace. We resonate in that. We emit that. So to ask, what's moral and what's not, I'm not even getting into the things of that. I am love. I am peace. I am joy. Anything outside of those things, the things of the creator, the things of enlightenment, the things of beauty, the things of oneness, of allness, of beingness, anything outside of that, I don't want to hear that. Merely to reach a stage where one functions primarily from reason requires a major evolution in consciousness to the 400s, which is a very powerful level in world society. Freud, Einstein, and Descartes calibrated at 499, the level of humanism. That's 1 point away from love. But reason, so vulnerable to loss of perspective through self-absorption, has in the long run never provided man with any solid moral or even intellectual certainty. Again and again, it has, to the contrary, led from the chaos of ignorance to an equally baffling cerebral maze. In a world of mass confusion, we desperately need a reliable, accurate, objectively verifiable yardstick to measure truth with. Hopefully, this book has presented such a tool. Any increased infusion of the influence of truth into the collective human consciousness gives us cause for greater hope than what tends inevitably to be a rather gloomy overview. We've established that consciousness is capable of discerning any change of energy to a degree of log 10. This means that there is no possible event in the entire universe that isn't detectable by the exquisite sensitivity of consciousness itself. The energy of human thought, though minute, though minute, is nonetheless absolutely measurable. The energy of human thought is absolutely measurable. A thought that emanates from the 100 level of consciousness will typically measure about between log 10, which is at 800 millionth, to 10 700 million microwatts. On the other hand, a loving thought of the consciousness level of 500 measures approximately log 1035 million microwatts. Although only 15% of the world's population is above the critical consciousness level of 200, only 15%, you all, only 15% of the world's population is above the critical consciousness of level 200. The collective power of the 15% has the weight to counterbalance the negativity of the remaining 85% of the world's people. Because the scale of power advances logarithmically, a single avatar at a consciousness level of 1,000 can, in fact, totally counterbalance the collective negativity of all of mankind. Kinesiological testing has shown that, here we go, one individual at 700 counterbalances 70 million individuals below level 200. Wow, that explains why Christ, Krishna, Buddha at 1,000 was able to steer, if you will, mankind. Seriously, because they were saying that he said here that someone calibrating at 1,000, which is the highest level, totally counterbalances the collective negativity of all of mankind. And each one of Christ, of his kind, of his time, his age, was able to counterbalance the negativity, the collective negativity of all mankind, which is why the story is said that he died for our sins, for the sins of all mankind. Buddha for his time, Krishna for his time. You know what I'm saying? Ooh, that's big. That's big. That's a lot on them too. That's a lot of pressure at that stage. Okay, so one individual at level 700, which would have been in our time, that would have been Gandhi, that would have been Mother Teresa, counterbalances 70 million individuals below level 200. One individual at level 600 counterbalances 10 million individuals below level 200. One individual at level 500, which is the level of love, counterbalances 750,000 individuals below level 200. One individual at level 400 counterbalances 400,000 individuals below level 200. One individual at level 300 counterbalances 90,000 individuals below level 200. 12 individuals at level 700 equal one avatar at 1,000. Listen here. So if you have 12 people in our lifetime that elevates themselves consciously to a level of 700, which is the beginning level of enlightenment, that will equal, those 12 people will equal one Christ, one Buddha, one Krishna. He stated here, there are currently 12 persons on the planet who calibrates at 700. 12 persons. And this book was written years ago. So I'm wondering, are those 12 still here? Or has those 12 increased to more? Because this information is widespread now. You know, people are stepping out of their religious boxes now. That is something. Were it not for these counterbalances, mankind would self-destruct self out of the sheer mass of its unopposed negativity. It's true. The difference in power between a loving thought and a fearful thought is so enormous as to be beyond the capacity of the human imagination to easily comprehend. We can see from the analysis above, however, that even a few loving thoughts during the course of a day more than counterbalances all of our negative thoughts. Come on. Now, what is her name? Rhonda Byrne. She's the author of The Secret. She's the main author of The Secret. Of course, there's other authors that created the culmination of The Secret, which is a beautiful, beautiful book. You all, if you have not read it, let me know. I can send it over to you. We read it collectively last year. Now, one of her books in that series is called The Magic, and it talks about um, our a sense of gratitude. You know what I'm saying? And in order for us to be able to daily count our blessings, so to speak, if we can sit and just think instead of thinking negatively, if we can think intentionally all positive thoughts that took place, positive things that took place throughout the day. At the end of the day, we're reflecting on the day that just finished, and we're only pulling out, highlighting, bring it to the forefront of our mind the positive things that occurred. you know so what he just said here is that even a few loving thoughts during the course of a day more than counterbalances all of our negative thoughts. So if you just at the end of your day just reflect on the day, and then think loving thoughts about the day, gratitude, grateful thoughts. Even if you did something, did something out of the ordinary that didn't really result in the you know in the results you were looking for, think about that instance, and in your imagination recreate it, right? Recreate that moment and do it differently in your imagination for a more positive outlook. That right there also is thinking lovely thoughts, right? And that counterbalances all of our negative thoughts. That's, man, we got to be intentional. We got to be intentional. Consciousness in and of itself is awareness. You know what I'm saying? It's awareness. The moment we become aware of the things that we do, don't do, habits, programming, conditions, and all of those things, when we become aware, because a lot of us we don't even realize we're doing some of the stuff that we're doing until we become aware of it. And then when we become aware of it, now we can focus on it. And when that behavior comes up, we can say, oh, okay, quickly shift, change it, intentionally, deliberately change it, and do something different, right? That's how we help that process right there. Next section, as we've said, from a social behavioral viewpoint, truth is the set of principles that people live by, regardless of what they might say they believe. We've seen that there are different truths: subjective, operational, hypothetical, and intellectual. And then there is factual data. The legitimacy of any of these is dependent upon the context of a given perceptive level. Truth isn't functional unless it's meaningful. And meaning, like value, relies on a unique perceptual field. Facts and data may be convincing at one level, may be convincing at one level and irrelevant at another. It's true. Functional validity of information received also varies with the intellectual level of capacity for abstraction of the recipient. To be operational, truth must not simply be true, but knowable. Yet each level of truth is unknowable to the levels below it and has no validity beyond its own territory. It's true. It's true. It's so true. you you have to elevate yourself to a certain level in order to understand what that level is trying to teach you. Because if you try to perceive on a lower level something that the higher level is teaching or showing, you're never going to understand it until you come up to that level of understanding. That's true. Thus, we can conclude that all levels of truth as we know it within the dimension of ordinary human function are examples of dependent truth whose veracity is totally contingent on a given set of parameters. Even our revered scientific truth is also defined by conditions, right? And therefore subject to dispute and error. It's so true. Statistical inference has become a propaganda tool, and the statistical distortions by which anything can be proven about anything have alienated our credence. Is there any impersonal truth independent of individual condition or context? Truth, as detected by the research methods illustrated throughout the book, derives its validity from ultimate sources far beyond the influence of any localized perceptual field. It respects neither personality nor opinion and doesn't vary with any condition of test subject or environment. It's true. Ignorance does not yield to attack, but it dissipates in the light. And nothing dissolves dishonesty faster than the simple act of revealing the truth. The only way to enhance one's power in the world is by increasing one's integrity, understanding, and capacity for compassion. If the diverse population of mankind can be brought to its realization, the survival of human society and the happiness of its members is secure. The initial effect of taking responsibility for the truth of one's life is to raise lower energy levels to 200, which is the critical level that power first appears and the stepping stone to all the higher levels, 200 being integrity. The courage to face truth leads eventually to acceptance, where greater power arises at the level of 350. Here, there's sufficient energy to solve the majority of man's social problems. This, in turn, leads to the yet greater power available at 500, the level of love. Knowing our own and everyone else's human foibles gives rise to forgiveness and then to compassion. Compassion is the doorway to grace, to the final realization of who we are and why we're here, and to the ultimate source of all existence. Ah, that's good. That's good, man. That is so good. That is the end of that chapter. We are on to the next chapter on Tuesday in 2 days. Okay, chapter 24. And that chapter is entitled Resolution. Resolution. Okay. This was good. And I slow read this on purpose because throughout this whole book, I'm not going to lie to you, throughout this whole book, I have really been scanning me. I've been scanning me and seeing where I fall or where I stand on the scales of and levels of consciousness. And I will say there are times where there's a seesaw happening. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I can find myself at the lower levels and things like that when I'm in emotions and things like that. But then I have to intentionally and deliberately elevate myself and pull myself out of that mind space, out of that thought center, out of that space of emotional, deterioration pretty much. And I have to intentionally work my way and build myself back up to the level that I know of, the levels that I know of, the level of love, the level of courage, the levels of willingness and forgiveness, the levels of enlightenment. I have to intentionally, and that's my goal. My goal for myself, and I said this, for my life, in this life, as this life, before I leave this life, is to reach the level of enlightenment. That's my goal for myself. That's my goal. I know it's attainable. I know it's reachable. I know it's doable because there were people, several people that did it before me. He even said inside of this book that there were 12 people at the time of the writing of this book on this planet that calibrates at 700. At that time of the book, okay? At the time of the book. In fact, I'm going to look and see When was Power versus Force written? Released. 1994. 1994, you all. That was 30 years ago. 30 years ago. 30 years ago, there were 12 people on the planet that calibrated at 700. 30 years ago. These numbers that's in this book were numbers from 30 years ago. Ooh, especially when we went over the religious levels, the levels of religion and faith, and where they were then versus where they are now. They were already plummeted then. Where are they now? My goodness. My goal for me is to reach a level of enlightenment. That goal, I know requires a release and a purge of certain things, certain mindsets, certain behaviors, certain words, certain insights, certain thoughts. Absolutely. Certain dynamics, certain relationships, certain circles, certain environments. It's gonna require that. And I'm willing to do whatever I need to do in order to ensure that that gets done. Again, if they had not come before us to show us that it's doable, I would know that it was. Now that I know that it is, I'm willing. I am willing, and I will. Okay. You all get this book, okay? Get the book. We're almost done, in fact. The next chapter is resolution. Okay. I'm presuming, let me see. Let me just be sure. Excuse me, the next chapter being resolution. We still have a little bit left. No, actually we don't. Actually we don't. Then that's the last chapter. And so the next after that, it shows the listing of all the chapters and where they calibrated at on the levels of consciousness. The chapter we just finished reading, chapter 23, calibrated at 880. 880. My goodness. My goodness. Oh, this is so awesome. Yeah, so Tuesday is the final chapter reading, and then after that it goes into the details of kinesiologic testing, like how you can test, you can test and things like that. It's a step-by-step how to, and then it's how to calibrate the levels of consciousness. It's a technique. He gives you techniques here, which I'm definitely if you have the book, right? If you have the book, I suggest you get this book for yourself so that you can read those on your own. I'm not going to go over those collectively because, you can get them on your own, okay? There's also even a link where you can find a video demonstration of these techniques as well, okay? He has notes, okay? After that, notes are at the back of the book, and I'm thinking, yeah, each chapter, he breaks down the chapters. The notes of each chapter, which is good. That's awesome. Oh, my goodness, you all. He was so thorough with this. So thorough. And then he put out here a glossary. Very good. Very good, because I'm quite sure there were some words here that was spoken that, people were like, what? And then bibliography, which is great because he did make reference to a lot of phenomenal books and things like that. Those, some of which I actually grabbed them on my own, and I'm listening to them via Audible or reading them via my own library and things like that. Oh my God, so good, so good. Okay, and then lastly, obviously, it's about the author, and you'll see who he is. As the author, the man, the doctor, things like that. That's amazing. I love that. So next chapter, you all, is the last chapter. Okay. To receive your own copy of this book, which I advise that you do, reach out to me any way that you can. Email, inbox, messenger, it doesn't matter. Reach out to me, give me your email address, and I'll send it over to you. It costs you nothing. Tips are, gratuity is, welcome, but it's not required. Okay. And I say it's welcome because I am a nonprofit. I do a lot of things in the community. It costs me to do what I do on a weekly for us to share things on multiple platforms simultaneously. It does cost. Okay. So if you want to share and contribute and donate, we thank you in advance for that. Okay. Shoot me the email at info@biancamissblee.com. That's info@biancamissblee.com. On Clubhouse, it's in the captions or in my bio, or it's right above. You can tap above my head on Clubhouse, and it'll take you directly to the website, which is biancamissblee.com. Okay, biancamissblee.com. Follow me on social media. You all: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Clubhouse. Dr. Bianca Miss Lee. Okay. Alrighty, you all. Listen, we will see you back here on Tuesday, where we will be going over chapter 24, the final chapter 24, entitled Resolution. Okay. Alrighty, until then, I love you. I mean it. There's absolutely positively nothing you can do about it. Don't you even try it. We'll be back here on Tuesday, right here, Divine Femininity United. Peace.